I've always feared or hoped that this would happen, that eventually the movement against woke gaming was going to have a bit of a boomerang effect, the pendulum swing. As games moved too far to the left and a lot of us were pushed a little bit further right than most of us are comfortable with, we also embraced the extreme right who normally would be heavily opposed to a movement like ours focused so heavily on gaming. But we embraced them in open arms because in this battle of ideology, we could use all the help we can get. And that finally came to a head when, people's ideologies came to a bit of a clash, as First Descendant has created a very sexy protagonist, to the point that several of the more extremist members of the anti-woke movement, those who would be on this side of the culture war no matter of the state of gaming, are revealing the fact that, the issue for them is simply the left-wing ideology and not what it's doing to gaming. Now, before I say anything else, I want to be very clear. The people I'm going to be talking about, Dreadroberts, John of Trent, Melanie Mack, I have absolutely no problem with any of these people. I especially have no issue with Melanie Mack because she is single-handedly leading the charge to restore the ability to use the F-slur with impunity. Something that I, as a bisexual man, endorse wholeheartedly. And for those who have seen my videos, you've known that my sexuality and a few of my politics have clashed a little bit with John of Trent. So I think the true point of this video is to prove definitively we are not an echo chamber. We are not a bunch of people who blindly agree with everything that someone else says. If we don't like something someone's saying, we'll stop watching them or stop engaging them, or at least we'll have a discussion with them. And when I do disagree with people, I'm not going to immediately block them and call them a tirade of insults. I'm going to have a discussion about it with them. So this is what I'm doing. This is my hat throw into the discussion at hand, aka what SmashJT has decided to call GoonerGate. I would have chosen a much better name, but what do you expect from a 40-year-old white dude? And honestly, I'm not going to lie, this is a bit more of a comfortable position for me to argue than others, because I grew up my entire young life arguing with extremist Christians online. This is my forte. This is where I got started getting into politics. It's kind of weird to be back here once again. So praise to SmashJT for being the one to bring this story to my attention and to everyone else's, because while I saw it going down on Twitter, and I was going to do a video on this either way, it was going to be a pain in the ass to gather all the receipts myself. I do have a few tweets saved that I don't think are in this thread, but I'm very grateful to him for putting it together, so there's actually a thread to go through. I would also like to say that I'm a little disappointed that John of Trent or John Della Rose or any of the people involved with that side of the argument didn't put down their own faults in Fanapulse, which is their dominant website, because I would have loved to have heard their argument from their point of view written down on paper. Because while I get SmashJT's perspective, and that's the perspective I agree with, I would love to be able to read what they think, or even better, I would love to have an actual discussion or watch a discussion between them on a panel stream, such as what people like Yellowflash did with DirectDirect and the whole Robin Hood debacle. Now, as SmashJT puts it, a new challenger appears, religion, GoonerGate explained, just when you thought we were winning this war. Now, I think that's a bit too black pill pessimistic. I do truly believe we are winning this war. This is not something we're losing. The fact that we're now arguing with each other means that we have enough headspace in this battle that we can start discussing the nuance of our positions, instead of having to wholeheartedly band together. This isn't us losing the war, this is us in the next step of the war. So this really is the best place to be right now because, as I just said, this proves definitively that we're on the up and in and we are winning this war. Now, those of us who are buried in the sands of internet time know that the gaming industry has been no stranger to cultural battles. Literally, the entire history of gaming has been nothing of an argument against moral panic. First, we started the moral panic back in the 70s and 80s with Christian extremists. Then we moved to the moral panic of the far left woke extremists. And now we're back to a bit of a mix of both, and hopefully we get to settle eventually on everyone agreeing in the middle. I gotta really avoid having this picture on here, because I'm sure YouTube will not like it. And for years now, the community has fought back hard to preserve the creative freedom that made gaming a groundbreaking artistic and entertainment medium. But just when the tide seemed to be turning, when woke games pushing divisive ideologies took massive losses after massive losses, and gamers rallied together to celebrate freedom of choice in gaming, a seemingly new faction emerges to try and take the reins, the religious side, determined to play moral arbiter over what the community should and should not be allowed to enjoy. Sound familiar? Well, yes, this is very familiar because this is what happened back in the 80s and 70s when they tried to control Doom and Mortal Kombat, up into the 90s even. All these games just trying to prevent the threat to the children. Won't somebody think of the children? Smash continues, while I morally typically tend to lean more into moral values of religion, far more than that of wokeism, I'm by no stretch a very religious person. There's value in it. The problem, going too far within any ideology historically always seems to end up in the same exact place. Enter GoonerGate. And I agree. I've never been religious. There's sometimes I feel a bit spiritual, but that's a really gay label that I won't put on myself. I also don't necessarily identify as an atheist just because atheists fucking suck. You can't find me a good atheist anymore. They're all terrible atheism is now synonymous with wokeism for a reason I'll get into in a little bit. But I've always been very center and extreme libertarian, and that means that because of the way that politics have gone, it has pushed me slightly more right than I've ever been. And I'm okay with that because I still stand on the core morals that I've always had. I also recently realized that maybe it's time that the masses get religion back because it seems like most people cannot control themselves without a preordained morality controlling them. The law simply is not enough to control them, especially when they ignore the law in favor of DEI wokeism, because wokeism is a religion. The latest controversy centers around content creator Dreadroberts at Sickly the Ninja on X, who critiques I've typically always respected ever since I first heard of them a few months ago, but who has seemingly gone off the deep end with his take here. In his defense, I don't know if I'd say this at the deep end, but I would say that he's getting pretty close. He's standing on the diving board and he's getting ready to go. Now, it all kicked off when Pirate Nation shared a gif of Haley, the protagonist from the game First Descendant, showing off her, well, scantily clad figure, we'll just say. The girl who I've been avoiding showing her whole body, because I think YouTube will hit me for that. With a cheeky animation, Pirate Nation simply captioned, "Is this what gamers want?" A fair question, thought on the surface. Which led to Melanie Mac responding, "Not me. I like attractive characters, but I don't want to play something with naked butts, boobs, or bulges up in my face. I feel like a total loser playing something like that." And that is a very fair response. I also do not want to play overly scantily clad women. There's a sense of sexuality in clothing. The way that it accentuates people or characters' bodies is much better than just pure naked. Take, for instance, Marvel Rivals. I'm very happy with Black Widow's design because it isn't naked. If she was naked, I'd like her design a lot worse. Take a look at, say, Soul Calibur, the character Ivy, who's practically in nothing. I actually think her costume would benefit from having something put over her clothes because she's basically wearing a gimp suit. It's not nearly as appealing as it could be if you, say, gave her a jacket or something to add a bit more style to the character that accentuated her natural assets. Now, this person here, who I'm going to try to pronounce the name, said, "What happened? You were not an anti-progressive person. In the end, these liars' faces are being raised. I thought you didn't like censorship since you fought about this for a long time. One more disappointment of these characters. Just create wars among yourselves." To which Melanie Mac responded, "I'm a Christian. I oppose making female characters look ugly or masculine or changing their body types. I don't advocate for weird gooner games, though." And in Melanie's Mac defense, on this post here, I am not seeing her saying that she wants this banned. I'm not aware of Melanie Mac going on saying that she actually wants things banned or gotten rid of. Though if she said that, then I will condemn that. But I haven't seen that yet. Just her saying that she doesn't like it personally. Because that's the thing. Games aren't made for everybody. If you don't want to play a game with an overly sexual woman and that makes you uncomfortable, you don't have to play it. It's that simple. However, things quickly spiraled when John of Trent, Melanie Mac, and Dreadroberts, among many others seemingly strong religious folks, launching into quite the tirade against the community at large. I think that's putting it a little excessively. Personally, Smash JT, but I understand what you're getting at. While I respect and get along with all these folks on a daily basis, just like them, we're all entitled to our own opinions on the situation. Now, I personally don't know these people, but I have no issue with them as a whole. My only issue is particularly focused on John of Trent, who constantly goes on tirades where it seems like he legitimately wants to outlaw gay marriage. And since I am a bisexual man, I have a bit of an issue with that. Now, here's where I would say, if his issue with gay marriage is the notion that marriage is a religious ceremony, cool. Give us another label. Just allow for us to join in matrimony. It doesn't have to be holy matrimony. But because I'm perfectly fine at succeeding that point. If you want the word marriage to be religiously tied, then I'm perfectly fine with there being government matrimony and then there being marriage. If you want to make that distinction, that's a perfectly fine thing. I'm willing to compromise on that. But if your contention is you simply don't want two men to legally be allowed to get together in a relationship, that's where I draw the line, because that means you are actively impeding on my life, and as a libertarian with libertarian values, anyone impeding on my life is immediately the enemy. Now, Dreadroberts puts in a very long tweet, so let's get right into it. Any person with a modicum of decency would say no. This is not where the future of gaming should be headed. The constant promotion of half-naked women as the greener side of gaming is getting ridiculous, and I'm beginning to think that these people who say they want to save gaming don't actually want to save it. Problem with that statement there, Dreadroberts, is the same thing can be said for you. And while I agree that the future of gaming is not butt-naked women, it's more sexual women, more women who are shown as having natural assets, who are not uglified. Because I think right now, the first Ascendant is an overcorrection, and in the future, we will get back to normalcy, which is what we all want. This is saving gaming because it is showing that sex does in fact sell, but people are going to get tired of the sex gimmick if we aren't given substance to go along with it. Furthermore, from our perspective, your claim that this won't save gaming is exactly what it looks like you're doing. It looks like you're not trying to save gaming. It looks like you're trying to implement your own moral biases towards gaming as well, and that's where a lot of us have a contention with it. So many claim to care about morals and the future generations and not giving even an inch of progress to devs who push woke ideology or whatever else, but then they'll turn around and tell young men and women to support titles that throw this stuff in your face. Most of what I've seen for months now from these accounts are butt cheeks and cleavage. I will agree there. There is far too much engagement baiting with overly showing cleavage and butt cheeks. I mean, it's really confusing when I see people give well thought out arguments on my porn app. I don't like it. In all reality, there is a modicum of decency that I would like us to uphold, but I do think you're taking it too far. Seriously, how is this making gaming better? All we're doing is pushing normies in the same direction, but on a parallel track. People may argue we just want to push back the ugly woman agenda, just trying to make a point to the lefty weirdos. Okay, so where do we draw the line then? Because there doesn't appear to be one. This is why I say that we need real adults with real ambitions, aspirations, and a mature outlook on the future to lead the charge in this industry. People who have their priorities straight and their arousal in check. And I appreciate a lot of the sentiment there. And he says things that are of value, but he also says some problems. The problem is there is no line. You know what the line is? The line is good. That's it. It is my personal evaluation of good. I'll even accept if we get some woke games. I have no problem with DEI-infested games so long as they are appropriate to the level of the market who want it. Life is Strange is a perfect example of this. It is filled to the brim with LGBT queerness and a whole bunch of DEI, and it's so over the top, but it appeals to its niche, and it is a cheap game to manufacture. It's not taking away resources from my games. It is not impeding on my ability to play what I want to play. My line is simply good games, and the majority of games appealing to the majority of the audience, as well as avoiding people who attack the audience when they disagree with you. We don't need to draw a line, because as I mentioned, this is a pendulum. Left games have kept everything over here. The First Ascendant is all the way over here, and all we're trying to do is get back to here. The First Ascendant proves that this side works. And it's going to swing here for a few years, and then it's going to swing back a little bit, back, and then it's going to settle here at normal levels. Problem is, Dreadroberts, woke is here, and you're here on the same point of this issue. This is something you guys clearly agree on. And then as for your claim, this is why I said that we need real adults with real ambitions and aspirations. That's a ridiculous claim. I completely regret that notion. Because you are implying that people who like to look at sexy things are not real adults. And you also imply that the people who like this stuff need to get their arousal in check, which is the exact same argument the far left makes when they say you're just upset that you can't goon to it. You're just upset that you can't rub one out to this character. That's all you're saying. You're making the exact same argument that the left makes there, and it is a disgusting argument to make. People do not want sexy characters so they can only play with one hand. That's not the point. The last thing I want to be dealing with is somebody who plays with 3 joysticks at one time. But I want these characters to have the option to look like this for those who want to engage in the content. And you know what? Human nature is to rub it out. If that's what they want to do, then they have everything in their right to do that, though I will judge them aggressively so. Which goes back to my favorite C.S. Lewis quote, "When I become a man, I put away childish things, including the fear of childishness and the desire to be very grown up." I want to engage with games that are fun, that are interesting, and you know what, maybe have overly sexy characters from time to time. It's not because I'm acting like a child, it's because I'm not afraid to be seen as one. And the notion that you are gatekeeping this notion of adulthood is a bit of a problem when it comes to the fact that These games are being made by real men who are brave enough to make these games and are brave enough to face the front of criticism from the domineering left. Now, JT continues, it's a strong statement, but it crosses the line and blurs the issue. While his points might resonate with some folks out there, and a few I've seen applauding, the community at large wasn't the biggest fan of his take. This kind of moral grandstanding comes across as super condescending and ultimately mirrors the same exact behavior of those he supposedly was claiming to oppose. Gaming is not about morality police. Gaming is about escapism, creativity, and enjoyment. It thrives when developers are free to create art that connects with players, whether it's gritty horror, stylized violence, or even character designed to appeal to more primal sensitivities. Anytime someone comes to the game industry advocating to be the adult in the room always seems to have ulterior motives. The gaming's diversity of content is a strength and variety, yet when individuals like Dreadroberts step up to try and dictate what adults should find acceptable, they ironically echo the woke voices they so passionately decry. And once again, Smash GT is very much on the money here. And I get it. I fully sympathize with the fact that you are not okay with this kind of game. I fully accept that. And in my opinion, it'd probably be a good idea for games like First Descendant to offer multiple costumes. That way, the people who don't want to look at overly sexy characters have that option. Look at Cellarblight. Eve defaults to a costume that, while outlines her body, is not inherently a sexual costume. Most of Eve's costumes are not overly promiscuous, but they have the entire range. And that's realistically what we should be getting, is a range of costumes. Not a decree or dictate demanding that costumes be censored, because that's what the left has done. They demanded a censorship of Eve's more sexual costumes, and they got away with it for a little bit, up until Grums managed to get it reversed. Now, I find it a little interesting that you didn't make any statements about this when Grums was talking about it, because I figured you would have, given your stance. The goal of our movement is artistic freedom, not overly sexual characters. Our criticism is of ugly characters because, unless there's a reason, ugly characters have no place in video games. And I say that as a fairly ugly person. And as Smash GT puts it, when you become exactly what you are fighting against, you are no better than those you are trying to stop. Here's the other thing, alright? I'm not saying John of Trent, Dread Pirates, Melly Mac, anyone, I'm not saying they're leftists. But the thing is, when you look at politics, it is not a plane, it is a curve. If you go far enough left, you are going to come out on the right. If you go far enough right, you are going to come out on the left. These political ideas eventually overlap with each other, and it is our job to ensure that we do not go so far to become the opposite. Now, I say this response from Dreadroberts is something that's quite disappointing to see, because this is not the kind of tactic we should be using when we argue. Smash, who is apparently a married woman with children of his own, seemed to think that another married man with children of his own setting boundaries and having moral assessed values is becoming exactly what you're fighting against. First of all, what you are asking for, Dreadroberts, is not boundaries. You are asking for control. You're allowed to set the boundaries of what you engage with, but you are trying to set boundaries for everyone else, and that's what we have an issue with. Hilarious, he continues. I've been fighting against DEI relentlessly and was one of the very first people to defend when Mercante was going after his wife. Oh well, lessons learned, I guess. Incredible how my call for not making things too extreme just to own the other side has shaken people to the core so hard that their brains have snapped in two. It's hard to believe, really. I commend you for being the first one to defend Smash when Mercante went after him and his wife. That's a great thing to do. But the thing that you have to realize is you are not drawing a line in the sand for yourself. You are trying to do it for the industry, and we didn't ask you to. I understand that Christianity is a bit of a martyr religion, but we didn't ask you to be our martyr. We don't need another martyr. What we need is legitimate engagement with material, the kind of thing that needs higher level thinking and discussion, and not just petty insults. JT's mind hasn't snapped in two. He is maintaining the exact same position that he had to begin with. It is you who have revealed that your position was a bit farcical in what you had shown us. And that's exactly what Smash JT says down here. Let me make this clear. Gaming is not about setting moral boundaries for others. It is always about empowering the you to decide what you enjoy. And that's 100% true, and Smash GT continues on, weird take, but whatever. In my honest opinion, gaming is not about morals and setting boundaries, it's about escapism and enjoyment. If a game comes out that isn't for you, don't support it. That's your right as a customer. What you are doing here is, with this stance, is purposely antagonizing people fighting against censorship for a reaction. I will always go for less regulation in artistic space, not more. Telling developers how they should be able to make a game, and how they should make you know better than the challenges we are facing right now. Yes, that's exactly the point. That's exactly what the problem is. You cannot buy whatever game you want, but I want the right to buy whatever I want. If I want to play Sex with Hitler, you damn well are gonna let me. You cannot stop me. It's a dating sim on Steam. It's like $5. It's kind of funny, but I've not played it. Don't worry. Every game has a right to exist unless it is legitimately too extreme to the point of breaking the law. I do not need morality police coming in here and pointing my community and say, ban. That's too sexy, get rid of it. That's too far left, get rid of it. That's too whatever, get rid of it. We need nuance in this discussion, and we need the ability to allow for people to be adults. You say that you want adults, but adults are the ones who choose. You are demanding that we listen blindly to what you think we need to do. In the wise words of Andrew Ryan, a man chooses, a slave obeys. And I am choosing to be a man and choosing what I engage with. You are asking me to be a slave to your ideology and only given to what you want. And Smash ET continues, if a game isn't for you, don't buy it. If a piece of art offends your sensibilities, just walk away. But telling developers that they should or shouldn't make, nah bro, that puts you on the same slippery slope as the forces of censorship we've been battling for years. Now, real quick, I know that some of the people who are much more on the left side are going to be like, well, aren't you guys doing this as the same thing by pushing back against DEI? No, we're not. And I understand the reason why you'd be confused because it does kind of look similar. What we're doing is we're asking for the industry to return back to normal. The problem is gaming industries are not dominated by those who like games. The people who are making games are not making art, they're making political soapboxes. And as I said before, I don't have an issue with the left making their games. I just have an issue because they're dominating literally every game. There have only been a handful of Western games of any value. Like supposedly Indiana Jones is great, but I couldn't give it a chance because of all the rumors around how it was ideologically captured. My issue isn't that there's leftist politics. My issue is that it is utterly captured by leftist politics to the detriment of the quality and when it's being made by people who abjectly hate my guts. Now, the problem with drawing the line is when Dreadroberts tried to equate drawing a line against revealing outfits with stopping a tide of nudity in gaming, I press further. Curious about these squiggly lines of morality you keep drawing here. How do you feel about horror games with chainsaws and gores, or FPS with piles of bodies stacked up? Apparently those are cool with your adult beliefs, but hot girls, get them out. I'm desperately trying to keep up with the lack of logic and moral grandstanding, but you are losing me. And then apparently Dreadroberts never did respond to this point. And let me be very clear on another point. Infighting is the dumbest thing that we do. And it has happened to every single one of this side of the culture war. Every single time we gain ground, we infight. We infought with GamerGate. We infought with Comicsgate. We infought with GamerGate 2. And we're infighting again now. How about you put your pride aside? How about you put your greed aside? And let's actually work out the problems before we start tearing each other's heads off. And when we do tear each other's heads off, how about we do it in a competitive space where we're trying to compete for monetary gain, literally, by producing games. The line in the sand, the place where we should be fighting is with products. It should be an argument of who made the better game, who made the better story, who made the better video, not literally attacking and trying to get people kicked out of groups because you disagree with something they say. And yes, this tirade right here is entirely focused on the comics book creator Ethan Van Sciver, who attacked literally everyone who doesn't agree with him whole stop, who only tries to use people and is 5 years late delivering his comic book. I don't want gaming to turn into that because I'm only now getting into this community and I'm going to be very disappointed if it gets ripped away as soon as I get into it because honestly, a lot of these guys seem like cool people despite our agreements. We need to prevent what happened to Comicsgate from happening to us, of it becoming people who only use ideology to, well, grift. We're on the verge of having literal grifting taking over our movement, and that is when we lose. So let's stop the infighting and let's either talk about it or just shove down our feelings into our throats and maybe deal with it on a later time when we're not still in the middle of a battle. Madame Savvy, who's excellent, with exception to her feet, also follows up, he's going out of his way to ignore the criticism of his language choice, and it's really obnoxious. He can dislike something, but using morality language and trying to speak for more than himself based on arbitrary moral appointment to try and shield himself from disagreement is where people are upset. Otherwise, perhaps I'll use his language against him and call him indecent for liking games depicting murder. And that's exactly the point. You cannot moral grandstand when there is inherent bias and inherent hypocrisy in where you're grandstanding. You have to keep it nuanced, you have to keep it honest, and you have to keep it fair. And as Smash GT follows up, I didn't actually read this tweet before saying that, so that's pretty funny, right? If he would acknowledge his bias in all of this, I think we could actually start getting somewhere, but I'm over the whole condescending tone that his approach has taken here. Sevi follows up, any person with decency, is that a slippery slope that got us here in the first place? I'm over people weaponizing that shit. Once again, spot on. And Smash GT continues, the truth is when you begin drawing moral lines for others, a precedent is set that ultimately stifles creativity and limits the market's ability to decide what succeeds freely. And yeah, of course, some people will always prefer games with gritty realism while others enjoy vibrant fantasy worlds or even risque designs. That's the beauty of gaming. It's for everyone. Always has been. Let the market dictate success, not some arbitrary moral compass. And if a game company wants to make a sexy, heavy, nude model, raging party game, okay, they'll have to deal with the ESRB first, and as much as I can't stand the ESRB, there are protocols in place already in the game industry to ensure games don't just slip into the sex abyss. Games are made for the audience who wants them, and if this isn't something you want, don't strong-arm the industry into becoming what you want it to be, because no one is going to agree wholeheartedly. I don't want the game industry to be just what I want, because what I want is not what other people want. I want deep, intense, morally philosophical focused games that explore psychology and philosophy on such a deep level that it would require a thesis to actually make the story work. But that doesn't appeal to the general audience, so I would never want games to become that. I'm perfectly fine with morally brain rot games also being on the market, because that allows for everyone to get something that they want. Smash 18 continues, moreover, I'd argue while hot chicks in games are always welcome, especially these days, what actually draws gamers to a game is the experience itself, not just the design of a character. Can it help? I guess. But then again, I also love games starring a monkey this year, and I'm not into that sort of thing if you catch my drift, so... Like I said, I think that First Ascendant is an overreaction. It is an overcorrection, and eventually we're going to swing back to center. But we need to go too far one way before we get back to the other side of the pendulum. Because if we stop the pendulum, it's going to swing back, and we can't stop it that time. And now Smash GT brings up why GoonerGate matters. The most ironic and troubling part of this debacle is how it mirrors the tactics of the ideological factions the gamers have spent years fighting against. Now that we're winning the cultural war against censorship, another faction emerges, religion, seeking to replace one form of control with another. Let me be very clear, and this is what I was mentioning earlier, religion isn't taking over the discussion. It has always been an argument of religion. Wokeism is a religion, DEI is a religion, they are treating it like a religion. We have been fighting against religious extremism the entire time. We were fighting against religious extremism in the 80s and 90s and 2000s. We're fighting against religious extremism right now, and we were fighting against religious extremism with wokeism. It has been the same enemy, just different forms. Smash AT follows up, in all honesty, I should have seen it coming, we all should have. I did. I actually did see this coming. I knew that this was coming. And you could just tell by the language John F. Trent was using and several people like that. And well, someone's always going to decree, won't you think of the children as a way to control how other people express their art? The lesson here, the more we argue over what others should be allowed to enjoy, the more restrictive the environment becomes for all game developers to push innovation and creativity. This is the exact path to hell is laid with good intentions thing. Let gamers decide with their wallets. Historically, it's always worked. The golden years of gaming came from risk-taking and unbridled creativity, not from moral regulation. I'd argue the more moral regulation that comes in, the worse the games end up being. And Will of the Fans puts it great right here. Sickly the Ninja is morally right, but Smash AT is practical. We're meant to be grown adults who can indulge the right setting. I want zero censorship in terms of making something available, and more responsibility from parents, retailers to keep it out of the wrong hands. That's the way it should be. You let the market decide, and if your child is playing games that are too mature for them, it is your responsibility as a parent to ensure that they aren't. This situation is blowing up on social media today and likely won't go away unless the gaming community collectively remembers one thing. Freedom of expression in art is paramount. If we let anyone, be it woke crowd these days or more religious grandstanders, take control of that, the future gaming becomes as bleak as they claim to fear. I never want to lose sight of what made gaming great in the first place, and I hope I'm not alone on that. Well, Smash JT, you're not. And I believe that a lot of the more religious people are also on our side. While I understand, I think most people can understand John F. Trent and Dreadroberts' position, we also understand that there's such a thing as taking it too far and overcorrecting. And I don't want to overcorrect like that. Well, yes, we're going to overcorrect with too sexy, and I have an issue with that overcorrection too because it's not really needed. We need to go there so we can return to center. We don't need to see the overcorrection and immediately fix the overcorrection with the religious extremists, because also if we start censoring games in favor of religion, we're going to empower the woke more. Remember, the woke left rose up in opposition to Christianity. All we're doing is re-empowering them to do the exact same thing they did before. Now, Grums also had some pretty interesting takes, and I figured we could read them over here as well, just to go over more opinions on the matter. I think being puritanical on both ends of the political spectrum doesn't help our population problem. We should let young men be young men. This isn't porn. It's not a replacement for a real relationship. But it does make young men want a real relationship, because the opposite is to tell them that it's wrong to feel this way, and it leads to even worse problems. Also, with this tweet down here, pull it together, team. They're using this to try to confuse, disrupt, and defeat you from taking gaming back. Stop this petty infighting and focus on the goal. Everybody fights, nobody quits. That's exactly the truth. If we're going to keep fighting back with each other, we're never going to move forward, and we're just going to allow for the woke left to come back and do exactly what they were doing from the get-go. I also want to read this tweet from Melanie Mack, which I kind of wish Smash GT had included. I agree with this take. I've been fighting with y'all against the woke mob turning female characters into troons, and I like characters to look attractive, but I don't want to be lumped in with those pushing for practically softcore porn in the character design. That's degenerate. Curvy female characters like classic Lara Croft, great, but curvy characters almost completely naked doing stripper dances? No thanks. Muscular male characters? Awesome. But these mods with Leon Kennedy in a jockstrap? Degenerate. No thanks. We can want characters to look good without advocating for porn. And my good friend Theo Snodgrass puts it excellently. This seems like a completely reasonable take. I have no idea why you're catching heat. More evidence that the gooner epidemic is completely out of control. Some people are so addicted to porn that video games, they must consume both at once. And I do agree that there are people who have a severe issue when it comes to engaging too much promiscuity content. There is a real issue when it comes to gooning. But at the same time, I also want to defend Melanie Mack's position here, because this is probably one of the best takes in regards to this from their side. And this is why Melanie Mack is probably my favorite of the far right. And also, I wouldn't complain if she called me a bundle of sticks. Now, excuse me while I go take a cold shower real quick. The benefits of Melanie Mack's thing here is it's completely nuanced. And it's not saying that she thinks that we need to stop things. She says that she doesn't like it. I see nothing here of Melanie Mack saying that we need to punish those who engage in this stuff. I don't see her saying that we need to make a stance against them. She simply does not want to do it, because to her it's degeneracy. And I agree. This content is degenerate, but people are allowed to be degenerate so long as they are not harming those around them, such as the troons that Melanie Mack so heavily hates. I agree, I do not want softcore porn in my character designs, but at the same time I don't want them to be planks of wood. All of this fighting, all of this criticism, it's stupid. It's a pointless waste of time that's just damaging everyone involved and harming our movement. But at the same time, it is a bit of a help, because it proves we aren't an echo chamber, we are not a monolith, and we are not all just agreeing to the sake of agreement or bigotry. We have various reasons for wanting to engage in this medium, and as you can see, it varies heavily depending on who you're talking to. This is exactly what we needed to happen to reinvigorate our strength together, our bond together, and to show our critics that they're wrong about us. The only thing we need to do now is Dreadroberts and Smash GT need to come together on a live stream and talk it out a little bit. Show that they're still friends. We need to show that we're still okay with each other, that we're still open to each other, even though we disagree. We need that proof beyond a shadow of a doubt, because otherwise we're no better than them with their rampant cancel culture. But that's pretty much all I've got. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think we're going too far with these sexy characters? Do you think we're not far enough? Though I don't know if I'd admit to that one myself. Or do you think the more puritanical people need to take a breath and realize that by censoring it, they're only going to make it worse? But let me know, and I will see you guys on the next one.